What are functions and how do you use them? That's what I'm going to explain in this video. It's important that you know what variables are and how to use them first, but I do have a video on that if you don't know how to use them. All right. So functions can either be an input-output machine or a block of repeatable code. Let me explain the first one first. Functions are input-output machines in that they'll take in an input, process it in any which way, and then give an output. Sort of like how a vending machine will take in your money, process your payment, figure out your order, and then give out the candy bar that you want. Or how Google Translate will take in the word that you want to translate and then output your word in Spanish. Let's take this magic box that just so happens to be here oh so coincidentally as an analogy. Now, this box may look like a box where I sharpie the word magic box onto it with bad spelling, and if you thought that, you'd be right. But this actually serves as a pretty good analogy for how functions work. Let's say what this box does is double the number that it gives it and then outputs that doubled number. So for example, it should take in the number 3, double it, and then give an output of 6. Or take in the number 5, double it, and then give an output of 10. Now, what actually goes on inside the magic box? Well, you can define what goes on using a function definition. In Python, a function definition consists of a function header, which consists of the word def, then the function name, then open close parentheses, and then a colon. Inside the parentheses, you put the function input variable. The input variable is basically how the function receives the input that you give it. So if you give the function the value, 5, then it'll store that 5 inside the function variable, input variable. And this input variable is only within the function itself. It can't be used outside of the function. Then it uses that variable to perform its processing and gives an output. So now that we've made this function, how do we actually use it? Well, you use it by calling the function. In your code, the way you call your function is you tell the compiler what function you want to run by typing out its name, then you type open close parentheses, and inside the parentheses, you pass in your inputs. Then when you run the code, the compiler will run that function and give you an output. And now that we have this output, what do we actually do with it? Well, you can really do anything with the output as it's just a value. You can put it into a print statement, you can put it into another function, but what most programmers do is they generally just store that value in a variable. So now in the code, you have two different segments. One segment is where you define the function, and the other segment is where you call the function. It's sort of like calling your friend and cashing in on a favor. First, the favor needs to be established. Hey dude, yeah, thank you so much for helping me set up that bookshelf. I owe you one. It's no problem. You work at Apple, right? Wait, yeah? You owe me one, okay. May need some information at some point. Then you call your friend and cash in the favor. Hey, remember when you said that you owed me one? Yeah, why? Look, I need to know the next features of the iPhone. Obviously, this is all just an example. Functions are not usually this melodramatic. They usually comply. Look, I made a bet online and I need to know right now, okay? Dude, I'll lose my job. Then you get your output. You said you owed me one, alright? You said it. Fine. They're gonna change the charging port and jack the price $100. Yes, I knew it. Alright, thanks, dude. Now, it's important to note that you have to define your function before you call it. Otherwise, it's like cashing in on a favor that you never actually asked for. Hey, do you remember when you said that you owed me one?
I didn't say that.
Oh, right. I didn't ask you for a favor yet. Do you need a bookshelf fixed? Okay, now let's get back to our magic box analogy. If you want multiple inputs in your function, all you gotta do is just add more input variables in the function header and then separate those by commas. Then when you're calling your function, you just have to pass in multiple inputs separated by commas. It's important to note though that each input you pass in when you're calling your function does depend on order, meaning that the first input when you're calling the function corresponds to the first input variable in the function header. Second input variable, etc. You can actually overcome this by just specifying which input variable you want an input to be. But I do think that's only a Python feature. I don't think Java does that. If you want to do that, when you're just calling your function, you just say whatever the input variable name is equals and then whatever the value is. There's also an option to have default values in Python. The way you do that is in your function header, like in the open close parentheses, when you define your input variables, you just say input variable name equals and then whatever the default value is. That way, when you're calling your function, if you don't specify a specific value for that input variable, then it'll just equal whatever the default value is. If you do specify it, then it'll just override that value and everyone lives a happy day. All right, so that's the first definition on how functions are used. The second way, a block of repeatable code, is a bit easier to explain. Let's say that every line of code represents instructions to a robot.
Beep boop, I am a robot. Beep boop.
Then let's say you want a robot to pick up a pen and, I don't know, place it on the ground or something. That's going to be a lot of lines of code because, I mean, it's hard to code a robot that looks so much like the narrator of this video. If you want the robot to pick up a pen and place it down 3 times, what you would have to do ordinarily is just take all that code and then copy paste it 3 different times. That's a lot of code and it's also really messy. Instead, what you can do is you can put it inside of a function and then just call that function 3 times. This way, it's a lot faster, a lot neater, saves a lot of space in your function, and I mean, it just overall looks really clean.
Beep boop.
Wait. Can we cut it? What are my lines again?
Wait, you don't have any lines.
What? But I've been practicing for like the past hour.
We've been filming here for the past hour. The more important question is, what have you been practicing?
What? All right, can we just do this from the beginning? All right.